And I'm back. And so here we just have some mouselings here, just for your perusal. And then just some more fun stuff. But today, well, actually, this is a continuation. So a little over an hour ago, we finished painting the two minis we were working on. Get her. And so right now we're just going to put some clear coat on them, a little sealant. They make spray-on sealant. I've used it before. I don't like it. Like I said, this, like the paints come on wet and they can run. The spray-on sealant does too. There have been times I've sprayed down a figure and then come back and it's all run down, so the top's not really sealed and the base is. I use this brush-on sealant, which works fairly well. This is almost like a thinned glue. It's got a little tacky stickiness to it, but it's not really glue. And so like I said, we waited about an hour just because you want to make sure the paint's dry on this, because like I said, this is sticky, the sealant. It can actually take paint off, so you want to make sure it's on good and dry. So I usually wait at least an hour. All I do on this, I just take a little bit of this. You may have noticed I've been holding it by the figure. When I say I normally prefer to do it by the base or an unpainted part, that's what the sealant's going to allow us to do. It's going to allow us to hold this without worrying about taking the paint off. Yeah, normally I would be picking these up by the base, but I fumble a bit when I do that, and for the video purposes, we don't want you watching me fumble around. But all I would do, like this guy, I'll actually put it directly on his base. I could do this on a palette, but I'd be wasting sealant. And I'll smear it around a little, and then I'll just work up, and like this first bunch, I will work up to his waist. And I will just get his legs and up to his waist, and because the main thing here is you want full coverage. You don't want parts without sealant on it. So to make sure I get everything, I just do it in parts usually. So here I'm doing everything below his belt, basically, in that first one. Reach in there, make sure I get these parts in there. And you're just smearing it around, basically. There's no real technique to this because, like I said, the paint's mostly dry, or it should be. There is the possibility that some will come off. Then we take another bit and we just rotate the base a little and put that somewhere else. That way I'm getting the base covered as well. And here I'm just going to do his torso and head. Again, reaching through there, getting everything. Get the ears, get behind the ears. Get the horns. And this, you can see, it's sort of glossy here in places, and when it dries, most of that will go away. You still want to thin it out a bit, but you don't have to worry. That's not going to be, you may look a little shiny in those spots, but you're not going to have these clumps of white there. Like, I said it's sort of a thinned out glue, but it's not really glue per se, so you don't have to worry about, dried bits of school glue sticking through. I actually considered for a while trying to make my own just by watering down glue, which I don't know if that would work or not. That'll be an experiment, which I would have to run a few times before trying to tell people to do it on a video, so I'm not going to. And then last bit, we're gonna rotate the base a little more, put another blotch on there, and we're just gonna get his weapon and arms. And both sides of the weapon. Sort of got a thick weapon, so we want to get the edges of it as well. Get his arm, work down the weapon, make sure we reach around behind it as well. Get the other arm. And here, I didn't quite have as much, so I'm going to put another dot here. Again, he's off camera a lot. Sorry about that. But I mean, it's basic. I hope you don't actually have to see this to understand that all I'm doing is smearing sealant on every spot of him. And this sealant, like I said, I let the paint dry for about an hour before doing this. The sealant itself will dry in about 5 minutes. I mean, it's fairly well, so it's a little sticky, it's a little tacky when I hold them, but in 5 minutes I'll be able to touch it without getting that on me. Clean my brush off, even though I'm going to use more of it because we're going to do her now. And unlike him, she's like mostly flat. She doesn't have arms sticking out. Now, she has arms and legs, but they're like all one base. So I'm just going to use like 2 bits. I'm going to do one on the front. I'm just going to smear it all up and down her front, making sure I overlap on the side some. And there's that little bit in between her arms there we want to be careful to get. And get under the hat and get her. Then we're going to turn her around, put a blop on the base again. And again, just smear this up and down her back. Again, making sure to get around the sides a little bit. Okay, so there are 2 figures. Total time painting them, well, I could have done either one of them in about an hour, so that's not bad. As a beginner, it probably wouldn't have taken me a little longer than an hour, maybe 2 hours for one, which is fine. So that was like less than 10 minutes putting that on. What are we going to talk about for the rest of this? And I mentioned last time, we're going to talk a little about care and maintenance of your materials. So I mentioned this can, the clear coat brush on the sealant can take off the paint. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about is every bottle of paint is different. So I can get this and it's ready to use right off the bat. I open it up, just pour it out. And then I get this one and it's actually very thin and I got to shake it up and shake it and shake it in order to get it mixed well. And when I say every bottle, I mean literally every bottle. I had one great bottle of paint and I used it and used it and used it all up. And then I bought a replacement bottle and it was just liquidy. And it was, same brand, same color. It's just a different mix of paint. So sort of getting to know your, knowing your supplies, knowing what they can do, knowing when you buy a new one that it's going to be different from the old one. It's just things you want to keep track of. I had one bottle of orange, which it dried real flaky. So when I put the sealant off, the sealant would peel it off more readily and I'd have to go back and touch it up and touch it up and touch it up. And, it was worth doing for what I wanted to do, but at the same time, just being aware that that paint was going to dry flaky and, it would have been nice to know that in advance. Your brushes. So you may remember at the beginning of the episode, number 1, I held up these 2 brushes and said, you want a pointy one and you want a flat one. If you paid close attention, you may have noticed that I was actually using these 2 brushes, which actually, and that's because, I showed you the new ones just because I'm not ready to stop using the old ones. The old ones are going to get bad after a while. I mean, as you can see, this used to be my flat brush, and it is nowhere near the quality of this one. And so, you're going to have to replace brushes. You may have noticed I started putting my water up here just because I wanted to show you I'm not leaving my brushes in the water. I'm rinsing them off, I'm drying them off, then I lay them flat when I'm done. I didn't show them, but still off camera. I just lay it flat. Because if you leave it sitting in the glass of water, then the bristles are going to start to fray, the points aren't going to hold. That's not 100% a bad thing altogether, though, sometimes. I mean, here's the one I was using. So, this used to be my pointy brush. You may notice it's got a slight curve on the end, which is actually sort of useful. There are times when you're doing some painting and you want to do a dot on somewhere, and being able to do it from the side is just easier to do than trying to do it dead on. So, the old, you're saying, this brush went bad. I'm not going to throw it away just because it went a little bad, because this is still useful. Clean that off a little. Just because in some cases it's easier to use. I showed you last time this brush where most of the bristles are gone and it's just got these few little ones, and that's real convenient for doing fine work, thin lines or dots. So even though I wouldn't try painting with this, I would still use it, just for a little, I just want a quick dot of something somewhere. This is a little frayed brush. It's not as, used to be a flat brush, it's not as good anymore, but for a base coat of paint, or putting on clear coat, or sealant, it's good. I'm not interested in carefully getting one spot. I'm more interested in just smearing, getting total coverage. So a little frayed brush isn't a bad thing. That's really all I have to say for that. I mean, my figures are done. I didn't really have a lot to talk about, just keeping in mind that every jar of paint's going to be different, every brush is a little different, just because I buy two of the same brushes at the same time, one's going to hold a point longer than the other, and you just have to, use your material and get used to it, and, realize when it comes time to replace it that your new one's not going to be the same as the old one. So that is really all I had to say for this time. And next time around, we are going to be talking, I talked a little bit about dry brushing last time. We're going to be talking about dry brushing and washes. And that's all for now. Thank you and goodbye.